Welcome to the Deep Dive. You're here because you want to get to the heart of a topic and you want to do it quickly, but also, thoroughly. You bring the curiosity, we bring the sources, and together we really try to cut through the noise and get to that aha moment. Today we're doing something a little special. We are starting a journey into ancient wisdom, a deep dive we are calling Upanishad Life Lessons. And this is our very first exploration.
It is, and our source material for this is really fascinating. It's not a dry textbook. We're drawing from dramatic excerpts, specifically from dialogues that use the philosophy of the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita.
So plays and dialogues.
Exactly. And they use this ancient bedrock to explore some really profound questions about life, about identity and conflict, but all in a context that feels very immediate, very modern.
So we're looking at how these, millennial truths kind of clash with modern skepticism.
That's the perfect way to put it, the clash.
Okay, so let's set the stage for this central tension. The sources give us a narrative frame, right?
They do. At the heart of it, you have a father and a son.
Okay.
The father is a man named Shankar. He's the traditional teacher, absolutely committed to preserving and teaching these ancient texts. He lives them.
And the son?
His son, Narendra, is a playwright. He represents the modern mind. He's skeptical. He's questioning, and he's really wrestling with the relevance of all this. He's asking, what do these old stories have to do with my life, with our world now?
Right. With technology, social upheaval, all the immediate problems we see, that's a fantastic engine for a conversation.
It really is. It creates this necessary philosophical friction. Because at its core, this whole deep dive is about the power of asking those very questions.
The power of questioning.
And through that questioning, it's about self-recognition. It's about the journey from what we experience as our limited mortal selves
to what we might actually be.
To the realization of our inherent unlimited nature. And the sources, they define the Upanishads in a very practical way. They sort of pull them down from the dusty shelf of academia.
I'm interested in this. What is that definition? How do they boil down the entire purpose of the Upanishads into something you and I can actually use?
They define it as simply the process of knowing and recognizing oneself.
That's it.
That's it. It's not about memorizing scriptures. It's an internal project, an investigation into the self. The wisdom isn't something out there to be acquired.
It's something in here to be recognized.
Precisely.
And this is where the sources get, I think, psychologically very potent right from the get-go. They introduce this concept of, what do they call it, the hidden person.
That's right. This is the fundamental premise. The idea is that beneath the surface of our social self, the personality we put on for work, for family, the face we show the world.
The persona.
Yes. Beneath that, there is, and I'm quoting here, another person hidden within all of us.
And this hidden person isn't just sitting there quietly.
Not at all. The source material describes this entity as constantly, even violently, fighting to express itself. It's fighting to break every single bond that holds it back.
What kind of bonds?
Social bonds, psychological bonds, material constraints, anything that limits it. It's a force of rebellion inside us.
And what's the goal of this inner struggle? What is this hidden self actually trying to achieve?
It's striving for two very specific things that the source identifies the ultimate human desire. The first is peace, or shanti.
Okay, peace.
But not just quiet. It's a profound, unshakable peace. And the second is absolute, boundless bliss. Anand. Yes, this inner striving for Anand, for that limitless joy, is the underlying perpetual force that drives all our external conflicts, our ambitions, our constant search for meaning.
That's a huge idea, that everything we do on the outside is just an echo of this one single struggle on the inside.
That's the proposition. And it perfectly sets up our first section.
Okay, let's dive into it. Section 1, the human impulse. A journey from limited to limitless. So if this hidden self is always fighting for limitless bliss, it explains so much about the human condition, this perpetual restlessness we all feel.
It does. The sources frame this restlessness through the lens of a fundamental dissatisfaction, a deep asantosh.
Right. So when we see a child rebelling against a parent or an individual fighting against society, it's not just negativity.
Exactly. We often see rebellion as destructive, but the sources argue it springs from something positive. The inner self feels stifled. It feels confined by its current reality. The quest for happiness, Sukhi Onna, is being blocked, and so it pushes back. It's trying to break those bonds to find more space to be.
And this isn't just about, family drama or personal angst. It plays out on a global historical scale.
It absolutely does. The sources give this incredible sweeping list of the things humans chase, which they argue are really just symptoms of this internal spiritual drive.
Let's talk about that because the scale is amazing.
Think about it. Why do we as a species spend billions of dollars and decades of effort to measure the absolute depths of the sea?
Or the heights of the sun and the moon.
Or why do we have this obsession with conquering the highest mountain peaks, Everest, K2? People risk their lives for it. Why?
The sources are saying it's not just about glory or science.
They're saying these external, audacious, ambitious pursuits, the attempt to break every physical boundary in the world, are just a physical manifestation of an internal, spiritual ambition that knows no limits.
That insight connects us right to the core existential paradox of being human, doesn't it?
It does.
Because our minds are driven by two pieces of knowledge that are completely contradictory, and we hold them at the same time.
What are they?
On one hand, we know intellectually that we are limited. The word used is simit. We are constrained by time and space, and we know we're mortal martia. Our bodies will die.
That's the undeniable physical reality.
But then, if we know that, why this intense, almost insane drive to conquer death? To achieve eternal youth, to build legacies that last forever, to upload our consciousness to a computer.
And that's the paradox. And the key philosophical nugget that the Upanishads offer is an answer to that question. Why does man desire to conquer death?
And the answer is?
Because he inherently knows deep in that hidden self that he is immortal, that he is Amar.
Wow. Okay, that flips the entire script.
It does.
So our striving for immortality isn't wishful thinking born from a fear of ending.
It's recognition. It's the inherent truth of that hidden self trying to express itself, trying to remind the conscious mind of its true nature, despite the temporary limitation of being in a physical body.
So for you listening, this is the critical takeaway. The sources are saying we are all fundamentally on this inescapable journey.
A journey from the limited experience to the limitless realization, from the illusion of mortality to the inherent truth of immortality.
So when we see people today pursuing cryonics or pouring billions into longevity research,
It's the same ancient impulse. It's the inner self that just refuses to accept the boundary of death because it knows on some level that boundary isn't real for it.
so if that's the underlying problem, this spiritual slumber that masks our true nature, what's the solution? What is the call to action from the Upanishads to stop the external restlessness and start the real internal work?
The sources quote one of the most famous and powerful calls to action in all of Vedanta. It's a phrase that demands immediate attention and change.
What is it?
Utyahata jagrata prapya varan nibodhata.
Which means?
Arise, awake, and realize the truth.
It's not a gentle suggestion, is it? It's a command.
It is an urgent, repeated command. And the text suggests it needs to be repeated because the tendency of the limited self is to just fall back into that spiritual slumber, into what's called avidya, or ignorance.
So this isn't just intellectual knowledge.
No, it's meant to be lived, to be realized, acted upon. It's about constantly striving to maintain that state of being awake. The sources even use this beautiful, poetic image of light.
Tell me.
It's an address to the sun. It says, "O self-nourishing sun, remove your rays, restrain your light, so that I may see your most auspicious and beautiful form." The person, the Purusha who is there, that person I am.
So the quest is to see past the dazzling external manifestations, to recognize that we are fundamentally identical to that cosmic source of light.
That's the goal of the awakening.
Which brings us perfectly to the next step. We've established the individual's quest. Now let's define what that individual really is.
Let's do it.
Okay, we're shifting gears now, moving into section 2, defining the self, the soul, reincarnation, and Brahman. And the sources do this in a brilliant way, using the intense drama of the Mahabharata and the play on Hayuga to frame the whole discussion.
Yes, we start right at the precipice. The moment before the first arrow of the Great War of Kurukshetra is fired, the whole dialogue is framed by the blind king, Dhritarashtra.
Who is blind both physically and, as we'll see, metaphorically.
Yes, completely. He can't see the battlefield, so he relies on his charioteer, Sanjay, who has been granted divine sight.
So right away, as a listener, you're forced to think about the difference between physical sight and spiritual blindness.
And Dhritarashtra asks that famous first question. Tell me, Sanjay, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do when they assembled on the holy field of Kurukshetra, eager for battle?
And what's the first thing Sanjay sees? What's the immediate report from the battlefield?
It's not a charge, it's not a war cry, it's a crisis. It's Arjuna's complete breakdown.
His crisis of conscience. He's the greatest warrior of his time, and he's just paralyzed.
Utterly paralyzed by the horror of what he's about to do. He looks across the battlefield, and he doesn't see an enemy army. He sees his teachers, his elders, his cousins.
He sees his Bandhu and Guru, his kin and his masters, all the people he loves and respects, standing there waiting for him to kill them.
And his emotional distress is total. The source material is very vivid. He says he fears killing them. His heartbreak is so profound that he makes that famous statement.
The rejection of everything he's fought for.
Yes. I desire neither victory, nor kingdom, nor happiness. How can I be happy by killing my own people? He's reached a complete moral and emotional dead end.
This is the perfect narrative springboard then, because his charioteer and guide, Krishna, has to intervene. And he can't just say, come on, buck up. He needs a philosophy powerful enough to solve an impossible moral dilemma.
And that is where the foundational doctrine of the eternal Atman, the individual soul, is introduced.
And where does Krishna start?
He doesn't start with action. He starts with grief. He starts by addressing the root of Arjuna's pain, which is attachment to things that are temporary. He says that the truly wise grieve neither for those whose lives have gone, nor for those whose lives remain.
That's a huge statement. Why should one not grieve? What's the reason?
The reason is the principle of eternal existence itself.
Okay.
He makes this monumental, universal statement that just shatters the concept of linear time. He says, neither was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor these kings standing for battle.
So existence is continuous. There's no beginning point for consciousness.
That's the core teaching. And it means that the Atman, the conscious principle, is the one unchanging element in this seemingly chaotic, constantly shifting world of material existence.
So the individual soul, the Atman, is the thing that endures.
Precisely. The Atman never denies. And here's the key part for Arjuna's dilemma. It neither kills nor is it killed. The sources then detail its immutable characteristics, establishing it completely outside the realm of physical change. It is unborn, or a janma.
So it was never created?
It is eternal, nitya. It is ancient, sanatan. And it is primeval, puritan. It is the essence of being that remains, long after the temporary lifespan of a physical body is over.
So if the Atman cannot be killed, then Arjuna's fear of committing murder is. It's essentially an illusion. It's based on his attachment to the temporary physical form of his relatives.
That's the philosophical medicine Krishna is offering.
But for someone on a battlefield, staring at real physical death, this is a very difficult concept to just grasp intellectually. How does Krishna make this idea of reincarnation and transition relatable?
He uses a brilliant analogy, a famous one, an analogy of change that every single human being can immediately visualize and understand.
Which is?
He says, just as a person sheds old, worn-out clothes and puts on new, pristine ones.
Okay.
In the exact same way, the Jivatma, the individual soul, discards an old, worn-out body and takes a new one.
That is a fascinating reframe. It transforms the death of the body from this terrifying annihilation into a necessary wardrobe change.
It does. And just think for a moment about the psychological implications of that teaching. For anyone who is bereaved, this analogy fundamentally reframes the entire process of mourning.
How so?
Instead of seeing the loss of a loved one as their total destruction, it encourages you to view the event as that person's soul, merely transitioning to a new vehicle, a new experience. The grief is for the lost form, for the lost interaction, but not for a lost essence.
It provides a kind of a philosophical architecture for accepting inevitable change without falling into that paralyzing sorrow that Arjuna is feeling.
Exactly. And to really hammer this point home, to reinforce the immortal nature of the soul, the sources provide this definitive, powerful description of the Atman's invulnerability.
This is the part that lists what can't touch it.
Yes, this is the statement that is meant to remove any doubt that the soul has any material basis whatsoever. It says that weapons cannot cut it, fire cannot burn it, water cannot wet it or dissolve it, and wind cannot dry it.
So by specifically listing the four fundamental physical elements, earth in the form of weapons, fire, water, and air, he's confirming that the Atman exists entirely outside the laws of the physical, temporary universe.
It's a different category of reality altogether. And this realization is what's intended to shift Arjuna's focus, to make him understand that his duty, his Dharma, is concerned with defending righteousness and cosmic order, not with mourning the inevitable temporary demise of physical bodies.
That realization of the individual eternal self, the Atman, it naturally leads to the next bigger question.
It does.
Which is what our deep dive is moving into now. Section 3, Brahman. the universal omnipresent principle. Once you've established that the individual soul is eternal, the question that the narrative itself raises for you, the listener, is, okay, what is this Brahman?
Right. How does my eternal little self connect to the big universal principle?
This is the moment in the dialogue where Krishna bridges the micro and the macro.
He has to. He explains that the individual Atman isn't just eternal in isolation. It is, in its essence, inseparable from the universal consciousness, which is called Brahman.
And the source gives us that ultimate statement of unity.
Yes. Aham Brahmasmi.
I am Brahman.
I am Brahman. You are Brahman. We are all Brahman. This single philosophical declaration is designed to completely annihilate the illusion of separation that causes all conflict in the first place.
If Brahman is everything, how is it defined? Does it have a form, or is it formless?
It's first described as formless Nirakar and omnipotent Sarvashaktaman.
So it's pure potential. Unmanifest.
Exactly. It's the unmanifest source. But, and this is a key point, the sources emphasize that even though it is fundamentally formless, it manifests itself in countless forms by its own deliberate will.
So it's the raw, unconditioned substrate of reality that chooses to express itself as all of conditioned reality.
That's a great way to put it. Think of it like a massive ocean. The ocean itself is the formless, omnipotent Brahman. A single drop of water you take from that ocean is the Atman.
Okay, I see.
The drop is limited in its scope. It's just a drop, but it is identical in substance and chemistry to the vast ocean. And when that drop returns to the ocean, it doesn't cease to exist.
It just ceases to be separate.
It ceases to be separate. And the manifestations that are listed in the source material, they're meant to highlight the sheer, unbelievable breadth of this cosmic identity.
It's not just a declaration of divinity. It's an assertion that this Brahman, has to include everything, even the opposites.
That's a crucial philosophical point. Krishna enumerates this cosmic identity to show its all-encompassing nature. He says, I am the sun, I am the rain, I am life.
I am death.
Yes. I am truth and I am untruth, asatya.
Wait, untruth as well.
Yes, because for Brahman to be truly universal, it has to be the container for both truth and untruth, for existence and non-existence, for light and for dark. If it couldn't hold the dualities, it wouldn't be the ultimate reality.
So everything is born from it, lives through it, and dissolves back into it.
It is the beginning, the middle, and the end of all cycles of time and form.
That covers the universal scale, the macrocosm. But how does this universal self define its presence in the specific, in the microcosm?
It emphasizes that it's present in both at the same time, the subtle and the vast. Krishna says, I am the soul, Atman, seated in the hearts of all beings.
That directly connects the individual eternal self we talked about back to the universal principle.
Yes, and he says, I am subtle among the subtle and vast among the vast. So whether you look at the smallest theoretical particle or the largest galaxy, the same universal consciousness is what resides there.
And the examples given in the sources, they really cover the totality of nature.
The whole thing. The great ocean, the insurmountable mountain, the life of the tree, the complexity of the creepers, all animals, all insects, life itself and death itself. And he concludes this whole exhaustive list by just stating unequivocally, I am the beginning of this universe and the end.
There's nothing left out.
Nothing is outside the scope of Brahman.
In this huge philosophical lesson, it all builds to the narrative's most intense climatic moment, Krishna showing Arjuna the Virat Rupa.
The cosmic form.
This is the sensory visual proof of everything he's just said about the nature of Brahman. It's beautiful and terrifying.
It's the moment where the abstract becomes terrifyingly real. The source material really emphasizes the sheer overwhelming intensity of the sight. It's described as a light equaling the flash of 1,000 suns, all exploding in the sky at once.
An impossible sight, something the human mind can't really process.
Exactly. It encompasses every possible dimension of time and space, all happening simultaneously.
So how does the narrative describe what Arjuna actually experiences? We know he was trembling with fear, but what did he specifically see that made the truth so undeniable?
Sanjay, who's reporting this with his divine sight, he conveys this sense of sublime terror. Arjuna sees the infinite mouths, the infinite eyes, the infinite arms and legs of this cosmic form.
But more than that, he sees time itself unfold.
Yes. Critically, he sees the destiny of the war unfolding within that cosmic body. It's not a vision of the future, it's a present reality he's witnessing.
What does he see?
He witnesses the leaders of the enemy Kaurava army Duryodhana, the great warrior Karna, all of them rushing headlong into the gigantic, terrifying mouths of this form.
They're being consumed.
They're being consumed, crushed between its teeth, and dissolved by what the text calls the cosmic fire of dissolution, the pralakyani.
So the Virat Rupa confirms for him that their death is not a choice he has to make.
Oh.
It's a cosmic event that has already been ordained and is already underway, driven by the will of the universal self.
Exactly. Arjuna sees their doom is already sealed. It demonstrates that the destruction of these physical forms is just one step in the cyclical process of Brahman. This vision is what solidifies the whole philosophical argument.
It shifts the moral burden.
Completely. It shifts it from Arjuna's individual choice to his role as a necessary instrument of a cosmic event that is far, far bigger than him.
After witnessing that sublime terror of the universal self, we are forced to crash right back down to earth.
We are.
And that brings us to section 4, the blindness of ignorance and the cost of war. The narrative deliberately transitions from the high philosophy of the Virat Rupa to the gritty, physical, bloody devastation of Kurukshetra, littered with corpses.
Yes, it forces us to reconcile these abstract concepts with real human tragedy. The sources move to the devastatingly specific aftermath. This wasn't a philosophical debate. It was 18 days of unimaginable carnage.
And we see the cost. Not in statistics, but in moments of deep, personal, agonizing grief.
The scenes of lamentation are designed to shock you, the listener, right out of that philosophical extraction. The air is thick with the sound of weeping widows.
And the sources single out specific stories, right?
They do. We hear the agonizing wailing of Uttara, the young wife of Arjuna's son Abhimanyu, who was killed so cruelly. We hear the lament of Karna's wife. And she's distraught not just that he's dead, but that her husband, such a noble warrior, was killed by deceit, by Chal, and not in a fair fight.
And the description of the fallen warriors, it really emphasizes the gruesome reality and the profound humiliation of death.
It does. The sources do not spare you the brutal details. Jackals and other scavengers are tearing at the bodies of these heroes, men like Karna, leaving their remains unrecognizable.
And there's that one image.
The most powerful and humiliating image, I think. The text notes that the heads of these once proud warriors' heads, which never bowed before any king, any authority, are now just lying in the dust under the casual kick of jackals.
That is the ultimate, inescapable physical end of the limited temporary self.
It is. And this scene of absolute devastation sets the stage for the pivotal moral confrontation of the story.
Between Gandhari and Krishna.
Yes. Gandhari, the mother of all 100 of the destroyed Kaurava sons. A woman who chose spiritual sight by binding her own eyes, yet now all she can see is the complete ruin of her entire lineage.
And she unleashes her grief and anger on Krishna. Her accusation against him is massive.
It's total. She doesn't see him as a neutral guide. She claims Krishna deliberately, willfully, allowed the Kauravansha to be destroyed. She says, since you are the Sarvashaktaman, the omnipotent controller of the universe, you had the power to stop both sides.
But you chose not to.
You chose not to intervene in a way that would prevent this ruin. She holds him directly responsible for the death of her entire world.
And using her own spiritual power, she actually curses the universal consciousness itself. Tell us about the weight and the scope of Gandhari's curse.
Gandhari possessed immense tapable. This is spiritual strength she gained through a lifetime of austerity, of devotion, and especially through the voluntary sacrifice of her own sight. So her words have profound weight.
And what does she declare?
She declares that Krishna's own powerful lineage, the Yaduvanshi, will suffer the exact same fate as her sons. They will destroy themselves, tearing each other apart like mad dogs.
And Krishna himself.
And Krishna himself, the one she sees as the cold architect of this chaos, will perish alone, ignominiously, like an animal in the wilderness. It's a full condemnation, born from the absolute heart of human sorrow.
That is the narrative climax, a definitive judgment against the very principle of destiny. But just as that moral condemnation reaches its peak, the true narrator of the story, Vyasa, appears.
He does, and he introduces the most astonishing philosophical twist of the entire deep dive, connecting everything back to the oneness of Brahman.
This is the moment that resolves that tension between the philosophical detachment of the Atman and the real human suffering on the ground.
Exactly. Vyasa appears to console the blind king and queen, and he offers this shocking revelation. He says, in the 18-day war, only one person died repeatedly, Krishna.
Let's pause and absorb that for a moment. Krishna was physically untouched by the war. The source material is suggesting that the entire conflict was an act of the universal self sacrificing itself over and over and over.
That's precisely what Vyasa implies. that the individual temporary identity of the soldiers, whether they were Pandava or Kaurava, was, in the ultimate sense, irrelevant. Every wounded soldier who fell, everybody torn by scavengers, every single person whose blood was spilled on that field was Krishna. The blood belonged only to Krishna.
So the conclusion is?
The conclusion is startling and absolute. The killer and the killed was only Krishna. The entire conflict was a solitary act of the universal self manifesting in duality, only to reabsorb itself. It resolves the ultimate paradox.
This completely reframes the tragedy. It wasn't one group killing another. It was a cosmic event of self-sacrifice and self-dissolution.
It was.
So if that's true, then all the sorrow and the blame that Gandhari leveled at Krishna, it was based on a complete misunderstanding of reality.
And that leads us directly back to the opening theme of self-knowledge. Vyasa suggests that Gandhari had bound her eyes not just with a physical strip of cloth, but with a strip of ignorance, or avidyakipati. This avidya, this fundamental ignorance of the oneness of the self and the universal, that is the true blindness. And it wasn't just her. Many others, including her son Duryodhana, despite having perfectly good physical eyes, were metaphorically wearing that same strip of ignorance.
They couldn't recognize the shared self that underlay the whole conflict.
And that failure led directly to the self-inflicted destruction of their own clan. The human tragedy wasn't caused by Krishna's negligence. It was caused by the universal self-imposed blindness of the participants who truly believed they were fighting separate enemies.
The conflict was inevitable because the blindness was total.
They were completely trapped in the illusion of duality. They believed the other side was fundamentally separate and therefore destroyable. The source material uses the Kurukshetra war as the ultimate tragic example of the self-destructive nature of avidya.
And that brings us to our final section and our final lesson. Section 5. Life lesson. The power of question. We return now to the present-day narrative frame with the Sutradhara, the narrator, speaking directly to us, to you, the listener, and he brings all these cosmic lessons right down to the personal level.
He does. The Sutradhara forces you to connect the vast scope of the Mahabharata and the philosophy of Brahman to your own existence. He asks the essential philosophical questions.
Which are?
Who, then, is the true architect of your world? Who is the architect of your personal sorrow? And who is the architect of your happiness?
And the imperative, the core life lesson, is so simple, but it's revolutionary in its implications.
It is. Prashna.
Ask questions.
Ask questions. And the source says something very specific. The answer is already hidden within the question itself.
Why is that phrasing so important, that the answer is in the question?
Because it shifts the burden of discovery entirely onto you, the individual. By daring to ask the question, who am I? What is this? You initiate the active inquiry that begins to break that strip of avidya. It tells you that wisdom is not something you passively receive from an authority.
It's something you must seek actively, through doubt, through challenge, through radical questioning of all your assumptions.
Yes. And we see the final success of this very inquiry in the transformation of Narendra, the playwright's son we met at the beginning.
He finally understands his father, Gaurashankar. This isn't just a theoretical breakthrough for him, it's a profound personal realization.
It's the realization that the form of expression doesn't matter. The truth is constant. He understands that wise people, whether they were the ancient sages who wrote the Upanishads or the modern dramatists who reinterpret them, are all just expressing the same eternal truth, just in different ways.
The truth itself is timeless.
Timeless. And his final climactic confession to his father, it highlights the critical distinction between intellectual knowledge and realized experience.
What does he say?
He confesses the great difference between them. He says, "There is a great difference between you and me. I only speak the truth. You live the truth."
Wow. I speak the truth, you live the truth.
And that is the ultimate distinction for any of us. Intellectual understanding is necessary. It's the first step, but it is not sufficient. Gaurashankar had moved beyond simply quoting the texts. He was the living example of the wisdom contained within them.
And this brings us to the final synthesized insight on the role of art and life.
Absolutely. Narendra finally accepts his father's teaching from earlier. Art is the book of life, his father had told him, but life demands an example.
And now Narendra is ready.
He is. By stating that he has now begun turning the pages of this book, Narendra is signaling that he's transitioning from merely narrating the truth in his plays to actively living the truth himself. He's moving from speaking the truth to being the example.
Which signifies the real beginning of his own journey from that limited self toward limitless self-recognition.
The journey has truly begun.
So, if we synthesize this entire deep dive for you, the listener, What is the core actionable wisdom we can take away from both the ancient texts and this dramatic framework?
I think it's this. True Upanishadic knowledge begins not with blind acceptance of dogma, but with radical self-inquiry. It begins by challenging every single assumption you hold about your identity and your limitations.
So that restlessness, that impulse for rebellion we talked about in section 1.
It is ultimately the hidden self struggling to find its true unlimited nature. It's struggling against the avidya, the ignorance, that creates the illusion of conflict and separation in your life. The journey is internal, but the results are universal.
And to give you a hint of where this journey of self-inquiry leads next, the source material offers a little preview.
It does. The upcoming story will explore the profound transformation of a dacoit, a violent bandit named Ratnakar, and his fateful meeting with the sage Narada.
So the next narrative will explore what specific interaction could cause someone so far from a spiritual path to completely change their life and identity.
Exactly. It implies that the seeds of wisdom and the capacity for self-recognition are universal. They exist in everyone, regardless of your current circumstances or your past actions.
This has been a truly expansive journey. We've woven together cosmic philosophy with the devastation of a battlefield and with intensely personal family drama.
It's covered a lot of ground.
We began with that inner struggle for peace and bliss. We explored the eternal, unchanging nature of the individual soul, the Atman. We identified the universal, all-encompassing presence of Brahman in everything. And ultimately, we were led to recognize that the responsibility for our conflicts lies entirely in our own self-imposed blindness.
That avidya that prevents us from seeing the oneness.
So if we leave you with one final, truly provocative thought today, let it be from Vyasa's profound insight into the war at Kurukshetra.
A powerful one to reflect on.
If, in the ultimate field of conflict, the killer and the killed was, as he suggests, ultimately the same universal self, what does that imply about the nature of all the small personal conflict, arguments, and divisions we construct in our own daily lives?
If the entire universe is just one entity failing to recognize itself in another, then every argument you have, every separation you feel, every instance of us versus them, is simply a reflection of that same cosmic principle failing to recognize its own reflection in the mirror.
That is an immense concept to sit with, that the battlefield is always internal, and the only combatant is, ultimately, ourselves. The deep dive continues, powered by your curiosity. Thank you for joining us today, and we encourage you to continue asking those revolutionary questions. Prashna, Karo.